Now I would like to present our first speaker today. Arthur LE GALL is director at KEA and co-founder of the Be Creative Network. He's responsible for coordinating KEA's research team and supervising studies, reports, and projects. He designs methodologies to assess the contribution of the cultural and audiovisual sectors to the wider society and economy, and engineer support programs and policies for the cultural and creative sectors to nurture arts, culture, and creativity across territories. He also delivers strategic advice to local authorities on the role of sport, culture, and creative industries for local and regional development. He authored and co-authored several research studies on culture and creativity in Europe, such as Mapping the Creative Value Chains, a study on the economy of culture in the digital age. He has an experience including managing some key EU-funded projects such as Culture for Cities and Regions and Cultural Heritage in Action, two peer learning projects including looking into culture investment and strategic initiatives in more than 150 cities and regions across Europe, and co-manages a capacity building program to support investment by banks in the cultural and creative sectors as part of the Creative Europe Guarantee Facility, a program launched by the European Commission and the European Investment Fund.
Many thanks, Ruba. Pleased to be with you today, and I look very much forward to discussing with you. I'll share my presentation. Meantime, I will apologize for my long short biography. Perfect. All right, so today I want to talk to you about creative ecosystems and our approach to creative ecosystems, a few case studies as well, if I have time, and talk to you a bit about KEA as well, what we do and the type of projects we lead. And we exist since a bit more than 20 years, and we've been working with different governments, different cities, regions, but also a lot with European institutions. So since 20 years, we have always been working in the field of culture, creativity, and always doing research projects with and for the sector. So our main aim, our mission, let's say since 20 years, has always been to promote how culture and creativity can nurture our society, can feed the economy as well of Europe, and let's say to really help to build a strong and resilient cultural and creative sector across Europe. And I'll start by giving a kind of bird's view perspective on what we are talking about here when we talk about creative ecosystem. This might sound like a bit of an odd term, but it's actually about two things. One is the creative sectors themselves in their diversity, so including music, performing arts, books and press, audiovisual, but also cultural heritage, design, video games as well. So it's very broad, but also the kind of glue that binds them together. So the type of interaction they have amongst each other, but also with the territories, with the cities, with citizens living in different environments. And this glue manifests itself in many different ways. And that's why here in this diagram, in this figure, we have also the different various impacts of the cultural and creative sectors, be it in terms of social cohesion, how it brings people together, be it in terms of urban development, how cities are shaped by, let's say, different cultural and creative activities, but also more economic-driven activities such as tourism or the economy and jobs. So when we talk about the creative ecosystem, we talk about the diversity of people working within the cultural and creative sectors, but also diversity of impacts, the diversity of effects it has on any given territory. So that's what we are talking about, a lot of different interactions across the board. And the reason why we talk about creative ecosystems is first because we believe in the power of culture to address many challenges of our times, but also because they matter per se. And if you look at this kind of iceberg picture, the way we care about culture is very often, at least in the eyes of policymakers, is to promote arts, cultural heritage, identity, promotes culture per se. but also to touch upon a much wider range of, let's say, public policy areas. Territories regeneration, urban planning, but also trigger behavioral change and help to fight against climate change, for instance, or simply to improve the quality of life in a given territory. So why should we care about creative ecosystems? It's because they matter themselves, but they also matter to address so many issues that our society is facing today. So when we talk about culture, when we talk about creativity, we talk about something which actually goes much beyond culture itself. That's something important in the eyes of policymakers, but it also has many implications that we should be wary about. First thing we should be wary about is what I would call, let's say, the instrumentalization of culture and creativity. So when we work in the field of culture, there is always this kind of distortion between what I just said, really. Okay, culture and creativity can contribute to so many things that we sometimes tend to sort of forget what's at the core of this different, let's say, range of impacts of policy areas. We tend to sometimes skip directly to urban regeneration, to social cohesion, without valuing sufficiently, let's say, the cultural and creative workers. And that's why we talk about creative ecosystems, because the way to work properly with arts and culture in order to deliver so many things for our cities and regions and society at large is to develop the right enabling environment, the right space for people to actually take up new initiatives that will lead to the different impacts we wanted to achieve, but will do so in a free and confident way. So we talk about, for example, cities, but it can be true for other types of territories. We talk about them as enabling spaces, spaces where you can develop initiatives, where you're empowered to do that, and where, let's say, the artists, cultural workers can express themselves in the way they see fit. I hope I'm not getting arrested for saying that. And how do cities work with enabling spaces? We've seen different types of models. Some approaches where there is a sort of top-down model where cities sort of impose a vision, impose a sort of leadership that then provides new spaces, new opportunities for artists to create. So, for example, living, let's say, from unused buildings to artists to develop their own activities in there. So it can be by providing direct incentives, providing grants, providing funding for artists and creative cultural workers to develop initiatives. But it can also be by simply, let's say, opening up spaces in the city for artists and cultural workers to develop their activities. And here we see, for example, some pictures where there is no particular, let's say, policy apart from unusual encounters, apart from accidental initiatives, which then give a new life, a new vibrancy to a specific place. So there are different models out there, from very directive to very, let's say, free models, which all support artists and creatives in different ways. And the way we have been working in this kind of very, let's say, complex and flexible environment is by always, let's say, looking at the specific model of the city, the specific way cities work with cultural workers, and try to understand what are the local cultural resources, how do people, artists and cultural workers actually work in a specific environment, and based on that, to develop, let's say, policies, programs, initiatives that actually help them to achieve this kind of the vision they have developed. So creative ecosystems in a nutshell are enabling environments. And for these enabling environments to work properly, there are a couple of very important steps that are listed here that we normally use in order to make the most of these environments. I'm not going to go through all of them, first because I've mentioned some of them, and second because I think that some of them are self-explanatory, but I just want to stop a bit on point 4, which is about thinking about innovation, because that's an important element here. When we talk about cultural policies, when we talk about creative ecosystems, we never really say what kind of innovation is in the arts and culture. And I think this is a very important point to make, which is that arts, culture, and creativity can lead to many innovative ideas, many innovative impacts, as long as you kind of take the risk that you would take in any other innovation process as well. So you need to invest in arts and culture and think of this as an innovative process. And otherwise, if you think as art as a return on investment on public money, you will never achieve much. The last thing I would like to point out as well is the importance of linking pins. It's the importance of people who understand both worlds, both different components of the creative ecosystems that we are discussing today, but also the kind of wider picture of what the city, what the government wants to do to navigate this environment between artists, cultural workers, and public policies. So there is a need to have people who are kind of connecting the dots in order to be more of an enabler for cultural workers. I'm going to go very quickly on this because this is more how we go about it. I'll just mention that the way we help people to develop creative ecosystems is always about 3 principles. It's always participatory. It's always about doing with the cultural workers and with local operators. It's always about being pragmatic, doing things that make sense in a specific context, and also being holistic, meaning that we look at all the different types of solutions that may be required, and we're not stuck in one particular way of doing things. And then we've got some different steps that we normally use, but I won't necessarily go too much into that because I see that I'm already running out of time. But let's say that there are 6 main steps. One is to first understand what's going on, briefing, diagnostic, then set up a vision that can be shared to discuss and develop the participatory processes, then designing a strategy and action plan together. And then implementation, monitoring, evaluation is kind of a classic thing to do in public policy making. But what I wanted to flag here is really that when we talk about creative ecosystems, we are talking about many different things. And most importantly, when we talk about culture, we are talking about more than culture in a way. And we are more than what we sometimes think we are. So that's all I wanted to say in a very quick way. I'll be happy to further discuss that with you today and give you perhaps more examples of all I just said. But I think that what Chris and Frederic will say will also be good examples from the presentation as well. Thanks a lot, everyone. Happy to answer any question you may have.
Thank you very much, actually, Arthur, for providing us with a lot of food for thought in this brief but very interesting presentation. You started by explaining what CCIs does and did since the last 20 years and how culture and creativity can nurture the society but also the EU economy. You defined the diversity of the CCIs and how the different interactions in the ecosystem happens. You also elaborated on why the CCIs matter and how they impact the many sectors of the society and how cities could become enabling spaces for nurturing creativity. I found it very interesting when you elaborated on the importance of building on existing cultural resources in order to develop policy and investment opportunities and the role research and development can play, but also the importance of having enablers on the ground. This actually will help us a lot, will help our next speaker a lot in presenting the exchanges they've been doing in her network and elaborating on further case studies. Thank you very much again.